If you remember in our last message, we actually began to delve into a little bit of apologetics, if you will, in regard to the divine nature of Jesus, the deistic nature of Yeshua. And what I did is I brought a couple passages to the table, passages that are utilized by anti-Trinitarians, by Arius-minded individuals that use these passages to prove that Jesus is not God because he's created. Today, we're going to press the issue further. I'm going to bring to you another passage that fits in this arena that our anti-Trinitarian friends utilize a lot. So with that said, we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 8. And Proverbs chapter 8 is all about wisdom. From the beginning to the end, it's all about wisdom. And the interesting thing about this chapter is as you read about wisdom, wisdom is personified. It's a very interesting portrayal of wisdom. Before we get there, I want to lay a quick foundation. There's something that Paul says, and I've already quoted it several times, but there's something that he says that I want you to see it on the screen. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Mashiach, the power of God and the wisdom of God. Understand, Paul had this great revelation of who Yeshua really was. And one of the things he identified, he says he is wisdom, specifically the wisdom of God. Now we're going to get to the crescendo. We're going to get to the passage of contention, if you will. In Proverbs 8:22, this is what we read. This is what all the fuss is over. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way before his works of old. There it is. This is what the anti-Trinitarians, this is what Arius based his ideology off of. This is a fundamental pillar of his ideology, declaring Jesus was created. Let me highlight one particular word. All the contention is surrounding this one word. And it's interesting, this is the New King James Version. But when you go to other versions, it doesn't read this way. When you go to other versions, it reads this way. Created. Created. Now, read it like that. Yahweh created me. We know this is wisdom. Whether you're an anti-Trinitarian, whether you stand in the camp of, I don't believe Jesus is God, but he's the Messiah, or you say, well, I believe Yeshua is God. Whatever side you fall, you know where there's not debate? It's over the fact that Proverbs chapter 8 is all about Yeshua. There's no debate on that. There was no debate from Arius. In fact, his ideology depended that wisdom was based on Yeshua. Some translate this term as created. Now, if you translate it as created, it totally changes everything. It's very different than possessed. And so all this contention is arising over this. This is very significant, and this is one of those moments where we do need to go to the Hebrew. And we are going to go to the Hebrew. The word is kana. Not to be confused with Elkanah, as in a jealous God. It's phonetically the same. It's spelled completely different. That's with an aleph. This is with a hey. And what this means is kana means to get or acquire, to possess, to purchase, or buy, to create, to set upright. You can see there's a spectrum here of how you could translate this term. And I'm just going to tell you, if you study Hebrew, and even if you study Greek, or any language for the matter, certain words can have a very wide spectrum of translation. And how you decide when to translate it into the receptor language in a specific way, context. This word, interestingly enough, in the Hebrew Bible is used over 80 times. Now, in the scope of things, that's not many because, some words are found a couple thousand times. So 80 times over 39 books. That's the total fullness that it's used. Now, I want to show you specifically how it's used. I want to get specific because this matters. 58 times almost 60 times it is translated this way. Bought by, buyer, buying, buys, purchase, purchaser, surely buy. Very pointed, very direct, very specific. Almost 60 of the 80-some times it's used is specifically in regard to buying or bought. Moving to the next classification, we discover 16 times it is translated as acquire, acquired, acquires, gain, acquisition, gain, gets, gotten. It's all the same. This is, okay, so here you have almost 60 times, 58 times, and 16 times. What are we at, 74? So 74 times out of just over 80 times that it's used, it is specifically used in the context of buying, acquiring. Now, if you even go to the English dictionary, you look up the word acquire, the first thing it says, to buy or obtain. But then we go to 3 times, we find it's translated as possessed or possessor. And then miscellaneous times it says formed, owner, recover, redeemed, sold. So this gives you some perspective. I wanted to get you through this so you can see exactly how this term is being utilized or being brought into the English, into this receptor language. When you go to the book of Proverbs, which Solomon authored this book, when you go to that book, you find in 11 verses, and I think it's 14 times this word is found. Now, it's only mentioned 80-some times. 14 of those times is in the book of Proverbs. Is that significant? That's very significant. Never once does Solomon utilize this term, kana, in a context that fits created. Not once. And does that matter? It absolutely should. This is significant as we're going on this investigation because you can see that authors carry a DNA to their speech. They have speech patterns. They have writing patterns. There's a writing style. You can really see when you read the epistles of Paul, it's just so, it screams Paul. Very different than reading James. Okay? Very different than his writing. Luke's writing style, very different than Peter's. So there is a stamp here. Solomon has his style. What I want to do is this. I'm not going to take you through all 14. I'm going to give you a good eyeful of how Solomon uses this term, how kana is found specifically in Proverbs. Check this out. Proverbs 4:5. It says, get wisdom and get understanding. Kana. Is he moving at this as saying, create wisdom, create understanding? I'm not God. I wouldn't translate it that way. It's absurd. It's to get, it's to acquire. One could say possess wisdom. He who gets wisdom, again, he who possesses wisdom or he who obtains or acquires wisdom loves his own soul. Proverbs 4:7. We read this, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore what? Kana. Get it. Acquire wisdom. And in all you're getting what? Get, kana. Understanding. Possess it. Acquire it. I love this one of my favorite verses in Proverbs. Buy truth and do not sell it. Remember, almost 60 times it's utilized, it's translated as purchase or buy. But buying is to acquire. That's what it means. And so if I were to say, acquire the truth and don't sell it, it fits the context, even if I were to do that. Create the truth? That doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. I want to take you to this is the Jewish Bible, the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society Bible. In their notes, specifically, on Proverbs 8:22, in regard specifically to our word in question, they make interesting commentary. Check this out. Since ancient times, interpreters have disputed whether the verb kana means created or acquired. The latter allows for the possibility that wisdom existed from eternity and was coeval with God. Contemporaneous with God. What they're saying is if you translate this as acquired, it pushes wisdom back into eternity. Coeval with God. It would be with God. Let's go back to Proverbs 8:22. The Lord possessed me. Some people try to translate this as created. The translation is beautiful here. The Lord possessed me. Now again, when you have a spectrum of how words need to be translated, context matters. It makes all the difference in the world. And considering what we just read from the Jewish scholars, recognizing, going back to the ancient rabbis that debated, should this be, should kana say created or should it say acquired? Knowing that the latter would push this into eternity. Well, if we translate it this way, can I support it in the context itself? It said, the Lord possessed me, and then what does it say? At the beginning of his way. Go back to the beginning of God. How far is that? Go back to the beginning of God, and that's where wisdom was. Do you understand why this would be translated appropriately, whether you would say acquired or you would say possessed? Because this is pushing it into eternity, even something that the Jewish rabbis, the scholars recognize. But that's what's being communicated here. I just want you to think about this logically. Could there ever be a time that God existed without wisdom? The thought is insane. It's utterly ridiculous. As though, okay, well now God gets a thought, somehow without wisdom. God gets a thought and says, now I want to create the heavens and the earth, and first I'm going to create wisdom, and then I'll have the ability to create heaven and earth. You have to do so many bizarre gymnastics theologically to start doing this. And this is how you know. When you stumble across the devil and his absurdities, once you start digging further and further, it's like, that's insane. That doesn't even make sense. And here we are.
Hey there, this is Mike at Corner Fringe Ministries. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked the video or it encouraged you, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the share. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Now, if you want to watch the rest of this video, hit the button here. And if you want to watch the rest of this series, you can check it out here. And don't forget, you can download the Corner Fringe Ministries app today on any of your Play stores. Thanks for joining us at Corner Fringe Ministries.